Let's see. I think we're live here on YouTube. Let me just see if I can figure something out. Here we go, here we go. G'day everybody. Let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear. I did a live stream a couple of weeks ago, doing one again now. I wanted to give you some updates, wanted to chat with everybody. This is less of an exciting stream and more of just a chill, laid-back stream where I smoke a beautiful Partagas cigar from Cuba, and I drink some tea and take questions from y'all. So, hello and welcome. All right. Let me know in the live chat where you are watching from and we will begin. Now, people got upset with the mermaid last time. I don't know why, but it was, we had a painting of a mermaid and people were, I think it was maybe one person, but I was like, oh, well, let's just put Blessed Karl of Austria up. Probably better to have him anyway, so that's what we're doing. Also, he's got a mustache, and I'm not sure if you know this, but I have a mustache. And everybody has to like it. So in case you were thinking it was disgusting or creepy, you're not allowed to think that. You have to like it, which is really unfortunate for you, you know. Let me just get my lighter. I'll be right back. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. I mean, talk about not trying hard, huh? This is not a trying hard video. All right, let me just light up this cigar and then we can chat. So I've had a great few days. I was just in Nashville. Can I just say the country music is a bit much in Nashville. It's not that I don't appreciate country music. I thought I liked it. But it was like some great conspiracy took place when I arrived, and all of the Uber drivers, no matter their ethnicity, you know, there was black people, Indian people, people from the Middle East, white folks, every single Uber I stepped into was playing country music. I'm like, is this like a requirement? So that was the first thing. I got kind of sick of country music. The second thing I realized about Nashville is people are really good who play music at live venues. So I was going into this restaurant to get a steak, and I was planning on listening to something, you know, with my headphones, and I sat down and there's this woman up there. And there's like 3 people in this big steak restaurant because it was earlier in the day. And I thought, oh no, I don't want to listen to this. And she started playing and she was incredibly talented and beautiful. And so I guess if you're going to play in Nashville, you've got to be good. Maybe that's the rule. Anyway, I had a good time. I was on John Christ's show. And that was an honor. And then the next day I was on Michael Knowles' show. The John Christ episode has released, but the Knowles one hasn't. But you know, like I've been watching, I used to watch John Christ, saw his little YouTube videos. He's very funny. So it was nice to go on his show. A lot of people are talking about how I didn't get any of the jokes, which is fair. Someone said, I resembled a homeschool kid who was hanging out with public school kids and like couldn't understand what was going on. And again, fair. I didn't understand any of the football references. And I don't even know, there's probably stuff I don't even know I didn't get because I didn't think there was something even there to miss. But John was wonderful, beautiful guy. They were all very hospitable. And it was nice just to talk about the Catholic faith and to reach maybe an audience who may not be Catholic. So I enjoyed that. And then the next day I had a cigar with my good mate, George Farmer, Candace Owens' husband, his official title. And then I went to the Daily Wire and had another cigar with Michael Knowles, and we were responding to TikTok videos. So that was really fun. Michael's a beautiful fella, and so I don't know when that'll release, but that was good. We are working away on the new studio. There's a lot that has to be done. We just bought some beautiful furniture. Our goal is to make it resemble a lovely cigar lounge, you know, like a sort of classy place, like a speakeasy where you might have a drink or have a smoke or something like that. So I think it'll have a similar look and feel to the studio up in Ohio, but I think it'll be a lot better. Hey, I've been asked to tell you guys about something, so here it is. Oh, so last year, you may have remembered I went to Austria. I was there for several months. I want you to consider going to Austria next year. It's an Austria summer experience, and they still have places available. It's May 16 through June 6, so if you're not doing anything, you'll spend 3 weeks in a 14th century Carthusian monastery. Innovative, life-changing courses, intellectual formation, rich Catholic community, daily sacramental life, weekend trips to Vienna, Salzburg. There'll be hiking and all sorts of things. So austria.franciscan.edu. They're not paying me to do that. They said they still have spots available. And so if you want to go spend time in Austria, I mean, why wouldn't you? You can go hang out in the Austrian Alps and study with a bunch of other Catholics. If you're looking for a wife or a husband, you could hang out there with them. So check it out, austria.franciscan.edu, and I'll put a link below just in case I screwed that up. That's a beautiful cigar. I was saying to Michael the other day, I know it's a good cigar when I exhale and then want to inhale the exhale because it's so delicious. I know that's going to appeal to about 5% of you. The rest of you think I'm going to hell, but I thought I'd tell you anyway. All right, let's take a look at some questions from our local supporters. And I haven't seen these ahead of time, and then I'm happy to take questions from y'all as well on YouTube. Matthew says, a debate between Trent Horn and Charlie Kirk would be fun. Is this something that you think could happen? I don't know much about Charlie Kirk, but what I do understand is, he's a serious evangelical Protestant who also has respect for Catholics and doesn't consider himself an apologist for, his brand of Protestantism. So I don't think he would be that interested. I might be mistaken, but my assumption is he wouldn't be interested in kind of getting into a debate situation with someone as studied and like Trent Horn. He'd probably rather talk to someone like me. I'm not a very excellent apologist, obviously, like Trent is, but I'd be happy to chat with him about things. But anyway, good question. I don't think it'll happen, but I've been wrong once before, so there you are. Have you ever had a guest on to discuss autism and how it affects families? I haven't. So that's my answer to that. What have been yours and Cameron's favorite cold weather dates? I mean, I do not appreciate the cold weather at all. I was told that when I moved to Florida, it would cease. It has not. It's still kind of cold. I mean, the sun's out, so that's something, but it's my favorite cold weather dates would be indoors with my wife, hanging out. So there you go. Sorry, we're kind of boring. Any Catholic book recommendations for the New Year's reading list? Yeah, I mean, Brant Petra just put out a book on our Blessed Lord. That's about as much as I know, but obviously anything from Brant Petra is worth getting, so I'd definitely point you in that direction. Then, of course, there's this book, you may have heard of it. It's called The Bible, and, you know, you could read that. My wife and I are reading through the chronological books of the Bible right now, so we're reading Genesis, and there is a lot of sex happening. And so I'm reading it out loud to my kids, and anyway, so there's a lot that goes on in Genesis. It makes me feel seen, though, because I feel like I'm wretched. And so when I see the way God works with, you know, deceivers like Jacob, I mean, the way that Jacob stole his brother's birthright, Esau, and then God still works with him. You know, it's like God hasn't abandoned his faithfulness just because Jacob has been unfaithful. And he writes straight with crooked lines, as the saying goes. And so I take a lot of comfort in that. Anyway, so you could read the Bible. Should the pronunciation of St. Augustine be standardized? Yes. So should the St. Michael prayer. And anybody who deviates from it even slightly should be excommunicated. I mean, I've always said St. Augustine, but you tell me, I don't know, is St. Augustine the Spanish way of saying it? Is that why we refer to this place in Florida as St. Augustine? I don't know. But yeah, I think it should be. Oh, we have a super chat. Wow, let me see if I can click on this without ruining everything. I found a great show about a Catholic man who struggles to balance his work and family duties. It's called The Sopranos, all right? I certainly couldn't endorse The Sopranos because there's a lot of filth in it, but I'm sure they're very excellent actors and that the story is excellent. But I think as Christians, we got to be discerning in what we watch. Should I read, says Andrew, Crime and Punishment or The Brothers first? Honestly, they both seem a bit daunting. That's the big myth. They're not daunting. It's easy to read and you'll love both of them. I think coming into it thinking that you're not going to understand it, I think that sometimes affects how people read it, but you're fine. Like, just read either one. I mean, Crime and Punishment is shorter. Crime and Punishment is very exciting because the murder, which the story is based around, happens almost immediately. And so the rest of the book is a sort of how, you know, the police officer finding out if he did it, how he did it, how to catch him. There's a lot of beautiful themes in the book about repentance and morality and things like this. So it's a shorter book and it's more like I think a sort of one story, whereas The Brothers, which is maybe my favorite book ever written, is a beautiful book, obviously, but there's a lot of sort of side stories. So like, you know, how I just said I was reading the chronological books of the Bible. It's like if you took out the side stories from The Brothers, it would certainly be an impoverished book, but you might be able to get it down to the size of Crime and Punishment and get the basic narrative. But every side story is glorious, and you definitely don't want to get rid of it. So maybe read Crime and Punishment first. But also realize that both Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov were written in serial form for a Russian newspaper. Certainly The Brothers was. I think I have that right on Crime and Punishment. And so the chapters are quite short. You know, you read The Lord of the Rings and each chapter might take you 40 minutes to an hour to read, whereas The Brothers and Crime and Punishment might take you 10 minutes, 20 minutes to read a chapter. So because it was written in serial form for a Russian newspaper, there obviously had to be, I think, some intention of keeping the reader interested so that they'll keep coming back. And so I find both of those books very exciting and easy to read. Now, it might be a little like Plato. For example, if you read Aristotle, you might immediately become confused because of the metaphysical lingo that he employs. Plato, in a sense, is easier to read, but there's so much depth to Plato that it's almost difficult to exhaust him. So you can keep coming back to him and keep finding new things. And so I would say that The Brothers is like that, and so is Crime and Punishment, that anyone can read it, but there's a lot of depth there as well. The only difficult thing about The Brothers or Crime and Punishment is how the Russian names are used. I suppose they tell me in Russia, depending on my familiarity with another person, I might use this name or that name. And so sometimes the names differ significantly enough that you'll be reading and you'll be thinking, who's this new character? But it's the same character. So for example, Alyosha might be called Yosha or something like that. So the way I got around that is by using, whenever I would see a name referring to Alyosha, whether it was Alyosha or what have you, I would always say Alyosha, and that kind of kept things straight for me. But yeah, enjoy. You got to read it. Robert Williams, greetings from seminarians in Rome. Did John Christ reach out to you for the interview, or did you reach out to him? How did that fall into place? Would you go back in the future? I reached out to him, but he was familiar with pints and said he'd be happy to have me on. So that's how that worked. Yeah, of course I'd be open to going back on the future. I really enjoy John, you know. Beautiful fella, I thought. I mean, I know he has a history, and this came out into the public, and he kind of went into recovery and came back again. But I think there's something we can all learn from that, because almost everybody is quote-unquote public these days. If you have a social media platform, even if you have 10 followers on X or Facebook or Substack, you are in a sense a public figure. So if you engage in behaviors that are nefarious and you're then exposed, it's an interesting question, like what is required of you? You know, do we require people to just sort of exit all public platforms forever? You know, like Michael Voris would be another example. Or are we like, you know, that seems unreasonable in a day and age like this where almost everybody is public, you know? And if you want to say, well, they shouldn't be public anymore, where do you draw the line? Is it sort of like okay if he has an Instagram page, but not okay if he has a YouTube platform? You know, like where do you draw that line? And I think if we want to be humble, I think we can learn a lot from situations like this, especially when people like publicly admit they're wrong and then from all appearances seem to be doing the work, as they say, repenting and trying to grow. I think there's something for all of us to learn in that, because all of us are sinners, and you know, imagine what it would be like to be a public figure only to have these awful things you've done come to light and everything fall apart. I mean, that was Michael Voris's situation, and you know, I have a lot of love for Michael. I think it's not because I had a lot of love for Church Militant. I really didn't. But you know, he's going to recovery. He's got a therapist. He's praying. He's you know, so I think it can be easy to sort of like look down our nose at people or to just go, look at that. But when you realize that you're the worst sinner, you know, I mean, if St. Paul can say that about himself, you probably can, I probably can, then we could also learn, you know. So all that to say, I really enjoyed it. All right, hang on, we have a super chat. I am currently trying to write a fictional book. I want to write it as a Catholic, no sex, no taking his name in vain, etc. However, there is some profanity in it. Would you suggest me changing it? No, not necessarily. I mean, if we weren't able to write or read books that contained immoral activity in them, then the Bible should not have been written, and the Bible should not be read. As I mentioned 10 minutes ago here, there's a great deal of immorality that takes place in the scriptures. You know, prostitutions and murder and all sorts of things, deception. I think it's important that as an author you not become a sort of mouthpiece for your particular ideology, but you let these characters be who they are, you know. And I'll give a shout out to a book I just read recently called Pilgrims. It's a sci-fi story about aliens who come to Earth and they go directly or primarily to the Vatican to meet the Holy Father. And it turns out that these aliens are Catholic and speak Latin. And it's like, what the heck does that mean, you know? And yeah, there's some bad language in that and things like that, but I think the characters are true to themselves. And there's no point, I think, writing a book where it just feels like you're editing the characters for them. But I also think there's a difference between displaying immorality in a way that just shows the shortcomings of the individual and then preaching, or rather promoting the immorality. Like there's a difference between showing it and promoting it, I think. And so maybe that's something to keep in mind. Let's see, we just had another super chat, but I do not know. Oh, here it is. How was your talk with Michael Knowles? Awesome. I love Michael Knowles. He's a beautiful fella. Real honest, humble guy. And humble's the word. I mean, I know he got a lot of criticism about his interactions with Charlie Kirk recently. But quite honestly, I don't think he cares. And that's the real sign, I think, of a humble man. If someone's praising you or they're criticizing you, you know, you don't go up or down. You just sort of try to learn from things. So I really have a lot of respect for him. All right, let me light this again. Ryan Pope from Locals says, any advice for newlyweds getting married next weekend? Praise God, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I don't know, I just say the same thing that I always say, you know, like, you are team each other now. Once you get married, it's team you guys against the world and against anyone who should come against you in any capacity. And that as a husband, I think you should always take your wife's side. Now, that isn't to say that if she is being kind of irrational or not seeing something correctly, or if you are, that the other shouldn't, you know, help them to see that. But I really think there's something to always taking your wife's side, whether that be from criticism she's receiving from friends or even family. She's your new family kind of thing, you know, so you're a team her all the way. Island you guys against the world. You are going to want to navigate certain things that come up in your marriage, and you're going to want to talk things through. You're going to want to understand if you're in the right or if she is. And so my advice there would to say, always talk to people who will take your spouse's side, as it were. So that's what my wife does, you know, and has done, and that's been her advice to other women. You know, if she'll get frustrated with me, or if we'll get into an argument, and she's trying to figure it out, and she wants to talk it through, she will only talk to a couple of women who she knows will take my side, you know? And that doesn't mean I'm right. It just means you don't want to be talking to people who would, I don't know, be kind of unnecessarily critical of your spouse. Does that make sense? So but you know what? There's enough in your marriage, there will be, for you to learn. You know, it's almost like, it's almost like when people talk about dieting or eating well. It's like, well, just try certain things and you'll know. Like, you'll know what works well. Now, you might not have the self-control to stick to that way of eating, but you'll know. And then just do that. Like, your body will tell you, you know, like, listen to your body. You know how people say that? Listen to your body. If you're working out, if you're staying up too late. So I think similarly, like just like your body will let you know, like your marriage will let you know. Like, there's enough between you two and your love for each other that'll let you know, like, am I off here? Am I loving my wife well? You know, that kind of thing. So, God will give you the grace, and I'm very happy for you. All right, let me see. I'm going to go over to YouTube now and see what you guys are saying, because I know you're saying stuff. I just... Matthew Lewis says, do I have a Mount Rushmore of Catholic writers? No, that's too difficult a thing to say on the spot, I think. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. Are we talking about fiction writers? Are we talking about philosophers? I mean, you're going to have... All right, so I'm going to just go ahead. You're going to have Tolkien. You're going to have Chesterton. You're going to have Peter Kraft. So there's a couple for you. Let me know in the comments below who should be on Catholic writer Mount Rushmore. Ant of Egypt says, Matt, probably said already, but very well done on the comedian vid as guest. Appreciate the way you graciously yet clearly articulated the faith. Blessings to you and your family. Thanks so much. Arthur King says, Matt, do you feel as though your life has come full circle? Do you believe that this is who you're always going to be, occupation-wise, career, faith? I don't know. I just love my family, and I want to hang out with them a lot. It isn't to say I don't get frustrated with the noise and the mess and, you know, my stupid personality and whatever. But I just love my family, and I really mean that, you know, like I enjoy them, I guess is more what I'm trying to say, like I like them. And I'm kind of getting to the age, and you let me know if you're there as well, I'm kind of at the age where I don't like going out at night. I was invited somewhere recently, and I had just a little whiskey, not too much, you know, but I stayed up till about 11 or 12, and I just ruined my next day. So it's funny, as you get older, you know, I know I'm not old, but I am older, and I just want to be at home with my wife, praying the rosary at 8 o'clock with my children, and then we read a little bit and they go to bed. My wife and I hang out, we talk, we laugh, you know, we read a book, we watch a show. That's what I want to do. That's what I love to do. And I like to wake up, work out. I just lifted weights this morning and have a cigar and a coffee. Very happy, very, very happy. This is what I want, and I'm very grateful to God. Oh, can I say something? This is really funny. Somebody, I think it was in my interview with not Charlie Kirk, so I just saw his name and said it, with John Christ. Somebody asked if I was on some kind of medication, and I didn't know what the medication was. I looked it up. I guess there's injections that people take to lose weight. If you know what that is, let me know. I forget the name of it. And no, I'm not against it necessarily, but I don't take it. I've been eating beef, and my diet for the last 13 weeks has been meat, cigars, and a little bit of whiskey. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Ozempic, I guess that's how you say it. As I say, I'm not against it in principle. I don't know anything about it, but no, I'm not on it. But I have lost a lot of weight. I've lost over 20 pounds. And I don't know if that's good, you know. There's that joke that Jim Gaffigan says where he's like, you look thin, but you look better fat. You look exhausted. And that might be the case, I don't know. But anyway, now that I've lost all this weight, I'm aware, like, I really need to be gaining muscle. So I've started going to the gym, and I'm just got this regimen of lifting. And I've been really enjoying it, you know. I'm not terribly strong, but I can tell that I am getting stronger, and I really enjoy it. It's really something to think about, I think, for all of us, that lifting, you know, can be really good for your mental health, and there's a lot of talk about that these days, but I think it's true. And I feel a lot better. So hopefully that answers the question about Ozempic. Jonathan says, Matt Fradd, I saw your interaction with John Root on Twitter regarding the sinfulness of UFC. Would a future episode with him be possible, not just on sports? Yeah, I don't really know him. I think I know who you're referring to, but I don't know him that well. For those who are just watching, my basic argument against UFC, I think there's two arguments, and UFC, etc., right, like other sports like that. It would be something like this. If I'm going to knowingly and willingly engage in an activity where I am inflicting serious and at times irrevocable damage upon another human being, okay, that's fine, but I need good reasons. I'm not saying we can never do that. I'm saying you need good reason to do that. For example, if somebody breaks into your house and tries to harm your children, and the only way in which you can repel them is by inflicting serious and irrevocable harm upon them, you might have to kill them, okay, that can be a virtuous thing, an unfortunate thing, but a virtuous thing. All right, but my second premise is that athleticism, money, entertainment is not a sufficient reason to do it. Therefore, I think that the UFC, etc., is immoral. Now, I'm okay changing my mind on this. I really am. Like, I'm not just saying that to sound open-minded. I'm really open to it. But it just seems pretty apparent to me. Now, here's the basic reactions you'll get to the argument I just made. You'll have people immediately come up with other examples, like NFL football, right, or boxing, and they'll say, well, it must have, see, someone's already done it. It's like immediately people do that. And I understand why they're doing it, and I think it's a fair response. But when somebody offers an argument, if you want to refute especially if it's syllogistic, that is to say, if it's deductive, and the conclusion follows the premises, if you want to show that I'm wrong, you're going to need to do more than pointing to other examples that sort of undercut my argument. I think what you'd want to do is show that one of the premises is wrong, or that the conclusion doesn't follow the premises. That is to say, that the conclusion doesn't follow from the laws of logic. Since I think it does, you have to then attack one of the premises. So that's what I think. And so look, so here's another example. Someone says the fight has been giving gifts from God. Like, what is it? How does that doesn't answer any of my premises. So again, if you want to show that I'm wrong, and I'm open to being wrong, you need to take issue with the premise. Saying something like these people have gifts is not a good response, because I fully agree that they do. I think it takes a great deal of virtue, right, for people to get to that level, 100%. But it's not a response to my argument. So that's all. If you want to respond to my argument, I might be wrong, but take issue with it. Oh, see, so somebody says people are willing participants. All right. They are in pornography as well, usually, hopefully. And someone might say, but I really enjoy UFC. Well, okay, you might really enjoy porn as well. I'm not equating the two morally, saying that both are equally as bad. Again, I'll say the argument and then I'll stop. And it's not very precise. Let me, I should write it out more precise, but the basic idea is, if in order to inflict harm upon another human being, like to intentionally, to knowingly and willingly inflict serious harm upon another human, see what Logan's doing? Can everyone tell Logan how I've already responded to this objection? In order to inflict serious harm upon another person, you need a good reason. That's all I'm saying. And surely you'd agree with that. Maybe you don't. Maybe you think it's okay to inflict serious harm on other people without a good reason. The next objection is that athleticism, money, sport, these aren't good enough reasons, therefore it's wrong to do it. So that's the first argument. Don't be telling me about boxing and boxing and football, because maybe I don't have an answer to that, but that doesn't follow that I don't have an answer to the UFC. I just made the argument. So you need to take issue with one of the premises. My second objection is the following. I know it's really cool and conservative. This isn't the argument. This is just, I know it's really cool for people who are on the Trump train to be all involved in like UFC and championing it and saying how cool it is and whatever. And like somebody said in a response to me, your argument is gay. No, it's not. My argument is not engaging in homosexual acts with other male arguments. That is not what is happening. You know, so like I might be wrong, but you've got to take issue again with the premise. Anyway, so the other argument is something like this. Cockfighting and bear baiting were banned not simply because of cruelty to animals. They were also banned because it was believed that these activities vulgarized those who watched it with any regularity. And I think that's a good argument. I think if you're the kind of person who gets really passionate about seeing get the crap beat. Now, I understand that there's a lot of skill involved in UFC, and I understand that one might celebrate the different maneuvers and pins and knockouts and for the skill. I agree. I'm not denying that there isn't a great deal of virtue and skill in that. You understand? But what I'm saying is I do kind of think that it does vulgarize that. I don't know if you're becoming a better person in enjoying that kind of activity. That's my argument. So again, I'm open to being wrong, but you need to take issue with the premises. You can't just... And I'd be happy to do another video where I explain, yeah, I'm wrong, here's why. But like, I don't know, what if the UFC fight was Christian versus a Muslim? Would that be sufficient reason? No. I know it's a joke, but not necessarily. David says, if a UFC fighter said they were fighting for the glory of God and leading a good Catholic life in both private and public, might it be permissible as an attempt to lead others to Christ? No, not if my argument is right. I mean, how on earth would that follow? Like, if my argument's right, and it might not be, I've got to put this back on, it's going to burn my head, then you can't engage in evil that good might result from it. All right, I'll do one more response to the UFC thing, then we'll move on because I feel like I'm losing a lot of people, or maybe you're not that interested. I don't know if I'm still interested. Ricky says, burden is on you to prove up your premises. Premise 2 has 2 key problems. As stated, it's a bare assertion. Even accepting the premises... Where are you here? All right, I think I lost it. But I want to thank you. That's an excellent response. I mean, all arguments have bare premises that then need to be defended. So what you're saying to me is, it sounds like you'd be willing to accept the first one, the first premise, that we shouldn't be inflicting serious damage on other human beings without good reason. But you're saying to me, your second premise, that athleticism, fame, entertainment, sport is not a good reason, you're saying defend that. And I think that's a good objection. It seems apparent to me that it's not a good enough reason because I have a pretty limited window as what I would permit, you know, but all right, that's at least you're dealing with the argument and I thank you for that. All right, Jessica, who was kind enough to give us $10. Thanks a lot, mate. Hi, Matt, no questions. Just wanted to sincerely thank you for the work you do. I am a convert and your platform content has blessed our home and marriage. That's really beautiful to hear. Thanks a lot. Now, so it's funny, I understand I might be contradicting myself when I say this, but someone asked me what I think about wrestling, and someone said wrestling is as silly as drag shows going on. I definitely disagree with that. It's definitely not as silly and as mentally disturbing as drag shows. But, I don't know, I think wrestling's kind of cool. But you might say, well, see, there you go. Even though they acted out, serious damage is being done. All right, well then I guess I can change my mind later. But again, appealing to a sort of UFC adjacent sport, or not even an adjacent sport, but to a sport where other people get damaged, isn't a direct attack on my argument. So I'd say you still have to do that. What tea are you drinking this morning, Matt? Asking as a Brit who loves English breakfast tea. and keen to try Russian caravan tea. I will say, yeah, Russian caravan tea is my favorite in the morning. Now, I usually drink like 4 or so shots of espresso in the morning. So I did that, went and worked out. Now I'm drinking tea. I don't know what this is. It's a black tea. I know it has, you know, I think some black pepper in it, cinnamon in it. So I don't have the name of it in front of me. I think it's some sort of Indian tea. But I tell you what, black tea in England just tastes better than here. Not just because of the quality, but because of the environment. I used to live in Ireland. See how I pronounce Ireland for you? Ireland, for 3 years. And it was freezing cold in a kind of damp way. There's something about drinking a hot cup of tea when it's cold and damp. You just appreciate it a lot more, I think. All right, so I'm going to avoid answering more questions on the UFC. I'm seeing some. I don't find any of what you're saying impressive, people. But just for the sake of not boring everybody else, I'll move on. Do you like that as a debate tactic? Like, I'm bored by your arguments and won't even respond to them. That's not meant to be a tactic. I think we should probably move on. Matt says, Justin, just wanted to say I'm a Presbyterian, but really appreciate your content. Even though we obviously have some doctrinal differences, I'm encouraged by your faith. Wishing you success in 2025. Thanks, Justin. That's super kind of you. Is it just me, or are people becoming less mean on social media? Like, that's such a lovely thing to say. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Favorite things about Canada. What I love about Canada, I used to live there, is how every province feels very distinct. And it's just a beautiful country. Victoria, is it Vancouver Island or I think that's what it is. Victoria, is Victoria on Vancouver Island? I forget, but I was on Vancouver Island. I just thought, this is as good as it gets. I mean, this is beautiful. I mean, I've been to places in New Zealand which were just breathtaking, but Vancouver Island was amazing. So there it is. Okay, so this is a good question. Lindsay Grace says, how did you and Cameron approach discipline when your children were young? Are you against spanking? All right, so I'm not against spanking in principle. But I think because it can be easy to spank in frustration, that one has to be extremely careful. And I think I would say to you, and again, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just saying, if I could go back and talk to young Matt Fradd, I would say don't spank. There might be very odd instances where it may have been appropriate, but I'm not against it in principle, but I think, as I just said, it's sort of like because it's easy to spank in frustration. And for those of you who are single, you might have no idea. Like, it's really easy to judge parents from your single life. But when you haven't slept, and when your children are screaming, or are intentionally kind of causing chaos in this home that's already chaotic, it's really important, I think, that we give parents some love and some understanding. Like, it's a difficult thing. Not sleeping drives anyone crazy, you know what I mean? And so, but I think that's just like maybe an additional reason to just. Now, your children aren't rational; they're not of the age of reason, presumably, and so you can't give them a lecture. But I think there are other ways, maybe, to discipline them. There are other ways. Let's just say I think I would have done. So. That's beautiful. NSK says, I think I've heard you say that God never violates the laws of logic, but how do we know which logic describes reality? There's first order logic, para-consistent logic, temporal logic. I'm too stupid to answer that question. I guess, but I would say like more generally, because I don't know what those words mean, but I think I would say generally there is a way the world is. And there is a way that reality is, and there is a way that reality cannot be. Call the description of that the laws of logic. So when we say God can't act against the laws of logic, what we're saying is God can't act in a way that is impossible. So to say, can God create a rock so heavy he can't lift it, is to say, can God do nonsense? And the answer is no. God can't do nonsense. And you say, well, why? It's because nonsense isn't a thing. Do you see what I mean? I think that's the basic. So however you pass out logic, the law of the excluded middle, the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity. There might be other things like you're pointing out that I don't understand. Okay, if they hold, then they're kind of describing the way reality is. And since there's a way reality is, to ask, can God do unreality, is to ask, can God do nonsense? And no amount of omnipotence can help someone do nonsense, because nonsense isn't anything. What else have we got here? Hey Matt, are you planning on putting content out in Spanish, perhaps using translations, hiring Spanish hosts? I'm certainly open to that, but I don't know how to do it, and it's just not top of my priority list right now. We're trying to build a studio, we're trying to do all sorts of things, so I'm open to it. Very open to it, and would love to do it. I don't know how to do it in a way that is affordable and palatable to Spanish speakers. Like in the past, I tried to do something like that, and Spanish speakers were like, "This just sounds stupid," and I was like, "Okay, well, I don't want that." So, Jellyfish asks if I've ever been to Montana. The answer is no, but I would love to. James Coffey asks if your only two choices for Sunday Mass were SSPX Chapel and a sloppy Novus Ordo, which one would you attend? I would ask my bishop's permission to attend the SSPX Chapel. And if he gave it to me, I would likely go there. I would also have to consider my family, which I'm not doing in this thought experiment, but that's my basic answer. I watched your interview with John Christ, says George. He has a large platform. Do you think there will be a large influx of former denominational Christians to become Catholic? So I have this theory right now. It's not terribly brilliant, but I think it is true. The Second Vatican Council, I think it was in Gaudium et Spes, said when God is forgotten, the creature becomes unintelligible. So I would say that is in fact what has become. That is the current state of things. We do not know what man is as a culture, if we are even a culture. And that uncertainty has been exaggerated and weaponized by the woke left. All right, so I think you can only stay in insanity for so long before you pick yourself up and look for sanity. And so what I think is happening right now is because of the overreach of the woke left, you have leftists or liberals coming into the conservative tent, which is expanding. You now have conservatives who weren't Christian taking another look at Christianity and are being brought into the kind of Christian tent. And then you have people who were maybe evangelical or Protestant looking into some form of apostolic Christianity. So I feel like there is a move towards that. And I think that I think it's an opportunity to invite people to repent of their sins and to live a virtuous life. My concern is that just like Floridians are afraid that the influx of New Yorkers and Californians are going to drag maybe the more conservative people over to their side, I have a similar fear. I have a fear that maybe Christianity is being used as a political tool. And so you're going to hear a lot of language that's very Christian, but that it may be for the purposes of refuting enemies instead of repenting from the heart. And I really think that if you want to know, am I walking the narrow road, as opposed to using Christianity because it's suddenly become some kind of fad? I think it has to, the answer is like, am I repenting from my heart? Am I attending a parish, right? Because a lot of these like ideas about tradition and beauty, they work well in theory. Like really, how could they not? It's like philosophy, works well from the armchair. But when you start engaging in a parish, you're now engaging in humanity. And that can be frustrating, right? So I think if people are like faithful in their parishes, you know, and they're repenting, then they're less concerned with the sins of Joe Biden and more concerned with their own sins. They're less concerned of what people on X and YouTube think about them. They're more concerned about how they're being faithful to their families and what their families think of them. Don't you think? I mean, that seems so. But overall, I think the question had to do with, you know, reaching a larger audience, and I do think that Pints is poised to do that, which is why I rely so heavily on your prayers. I really do. So please pray a rosary for me and the channel, so that despite my shortcomings and the shortcomings of my guests, Christ can be proclaimed and people can be brought onto the bark of Peter and encouraged to stay there, you know. So that's what I'd say about that. Would you be open, says Trad Dad. What's up, Trad Dad? Nice to see you. And I want to say I appreciate all of your comments lately. It's very encouraging, and thank you. Would you be open to hosting a seminar discussion on a single piece of text and inviting priests, students, and maybe some other Catholic YouTubers? Something from the great books, maybe. So I want to plug my locals community, because on my locals community, we have courses taught by experts that you can have access to. So Dr. Ed Fazer did a 5-part exclusive video series on the 5 ways of Thomas Aquinas. You can go watch that right now. Joseph Pierce, who's an expert on Tolkien, did a very well-produced video series on Tolkien. Please consider supporting me, mattfradd.locals.com. I need your financial support, actually. And you get these episodes, not these episodes, but my interviews 1 week ahead of time. You get to be part of a great Catholic community. You get exclusive streams from me if that interests you, and all sorts of other things that we're planning on doing. So if you haven't supported us and you can afford $10 a month, if you can't, please don't, obviously, but mattfradd.locals.com, I'd really appreciate it. But that would be a way to kind of get access to some of these more intentional things, and we'll probably do some again in the near future. Ryan Long says, do you have a first guest lined up? Well, so we have a few people on the docket. John Eldridge, who's a beautiful Protestant fellow, wrote a book called Wild at Heart, and I learn a lot from him. Brett Cooper's coming on, but I don't think it'll be till March, February or March. We have Rod Dreher, who wrote The Benedict Option, coming in. We have another exorcist who Michael Knowles interviewed at one point. I forget his name, forgive me. Tammy Peterson will be on the show. I'm in talks with Russell Brand's people, so, you know, we'll see. Joy in the Struggle says, Protestant here, have been watching you for years and appreciate the work you've done on porn and lust. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Maria says, hi, recently bought a house and husband lost job. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then we found out we're expecting our second child. He's trying to start a business during this time. Do you have any advice to build our trust in God? Well, I mean, it always looks bleak from this end of the story. But when you cross the Rubicon, which you will look back and see how faithful God is. So if I were you, Maria, I would really intentionally build up your husband. I would praise him. I would thank him for the work he's doing for you and your family. I think that's really important, that a man believes that his wife believes in him and doesn't shame him, clearly. I know you wouldn't do that, but doesn't guilt him, but just supports him. And I mean, look, if it was your husband writing, I'd have advice to him on how he can love you. But since you're writing to me, I would say that. I would say choose a prayer that you and your husband can pray every night. And it could just be the rosary every night. Do that. If you're not there yet, praying the Angelus at the end of the day together. And have your intention be, Lord, provide for our family. Provide for our family. Yeah. So, look, I've been there. We've been in some situations that look pretty terrifying. And the entire time, my wife was so supportive, and we were in it together. She never made me feel bad for not making money. She never made me feel bad. I lost my job. I don't know if you know this, but I was fired on my birthday a month before my wedding. Isn't that fun? So at the time of my wedding, I was both unemployed and illegal. Like, I was one of those illegal aliens. So, the Lord works. And I think what's important is that you two are just faithful to each other. You trust in him, and you'll be fine. It's almost insulting to hear that from somebody who's not in your predicament. I'm sure you're feeling a great deal of stress and anxiety right now, and I'm sorry for that. But you will be absolutely fine. John says, I'm in almost the exact situation right now, and my wife is a beacon of encouragement and faith for me while we struggle financially. I am blessed. Yeah. Just like women are blessed to have good men in their lives, men are blessed to have good, encouraging, women. So, shout out to all the wives out there. You're beautiful. We love you. Let me know what you think about these streams in the comments below. I'm open to this boring everyone silly. And I'll stop doing them. But just in this transition period where we're building the studio in Florida, I thought it would be nice to at least come on here weekly or every other week just to say hi. But I'm open to not doing it as well. Father John Brown, nice to see you, Father. Thank you for your continual yes to the priesthood. Just wanted to say thanks for the hard work you do. Enjoyed briefly meeting you at this summer at the Catholic Creators Conference. Yep, I enjoyed meeting you too. Do you think you and Cameron would ever move back to Australia? I do not think that. I'm going to Australia at the end of this month, actually. And I'm really excited to get to evangelize there, with my bride. Really like her. Really like her. She's beautiful. So there you are. Jed Adams says, interested in Catholicism but struggle with Marian dogmas, what to do? Yeah, so first of all, I would say be at peace. Like, you're not the only, and I know you know this, but you're not the only Protestant who's struggled with the Marian dogmas. And so there's nothing wrong with you for struggling with them, and it's okay that you struggle with them. So, I would say this, if you're interested in Catholicism, maybe just for like a season, right? Maybe just for a couple of weeks or a month, just put the Marian dogmas to one side and examine the other claims that you'll need to accept as a Catholic. Papal infallibility, for example, the Holy Eucharist, prayers to the saints, and things like this. And just say to our Lord, Lord, I love you, and I don't want to offend you. And if accepting what the Catholic Church teaches about the Blessed Virgin Mary would offend you, then I don't want anything to do with it. So guide me in this process, Jesus. And I think you can trust that the Lord knows your heart, and you can just sort of be at peace as you discern these things, None of us are infallible. None of us are omniscient. Most of us aren't terribly intelligent, even humanly speaking. Like, I'm not. You know, I know people who are, and I'm absolutely in awe, but I'm not. And so I think, you know, the difference between you and me and the God of the universe is a far greater difference between a toddler and the parent. And so, you know, the parent understands the cognitive limitations of the child and doesn't blame the child when the child is confused or doesn't understand things. He stoops down to the level of the child, eh? And, you know, how much better is the Heavenly Father? So just kind of be at peace and, you know, I mean, if you're looking for some kind of specific thing to read about the Marian dogmas, I did do an interview with two people. I forget the name of it, but, you know, every objection to Mary answered or something. And maybe that doesn't actually answer all your objections, but that could be a place to start. Also, I would recommend getting Scott Hahn's book, Hail Holy Queen. You know, there are books you can read, but just, yeah, go easy on yourself. You don't have to make yourself believe what right now you can't believe. And Lisa says, what's your view on parish priests going on multiple pilgrimage trips annually when most parishioners don't live that luxuriously? Well, I don't know if I would refer to it as luxury. He's probably ministering to the people on these pilgrimages, hearing their confessions, celebrating Holy Mass, etc. So I'd be reluctant to accuse people of living lavishly, you know, unless, well, maybe not even if you knew the situation. Try to give them the benefit of the doubt, I would say. Also realize, like, it's got to be difficult, I think, to be a priest where you're constantly on call, you know, hospital visits and, you know, marriages and funerals and things like this. And it's important that priests who are men and women, you know, like us, take care of themselves, you know, so that they can proclaim the gospel. And if, you know, going on a trip to the Holy Land, let's say, not only gives them an opportunity to minister to the pilgrims, but also helps reinvigorate their faith, like, man, that's not nothing, you know. Mark says, have you seen Lila's discussion with former abortion doctors, abortion survivors, and women who regret abortion? No, I love Lila, and so I'm sure it's good. I hosted a debate between an abortionist and Stephanie Gray, and if you want to watch that debate, it was excellent. And I have all the respect in the world for women who, you know, repent of their abortions and then are trying to support other women. I think that's one of the most beautiful things. So, and I love Lila, and I'm grateful for all the work she does. Did I say that this cigar was beautiful? It is just, wow. Ratsquid says, Matt Fradd, how do you view the intersection of faith and the quest for immortality, especially in light of scientific advancements aimed at extending life indefinitely? Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I mean, unless unless immorality is involved in trying to extend one's life, I'm not sure why we should find it problematic, even indefinitely. I mean, no one's going to live indefinitely in the natural sense because Christ will return. So even if people were able to live indefinitely, so-called, I don't think that's necessarily problematic. There might be a whole host of issues that result from that, you know. Maybe the means by which they live indefinitely is immoral and therefore ought not to do that, or maybe there becomes sort of like state-enforced abortions and killing of the mentally disabled to make room for rich people, you know, who are wanting to live indefinitely, you know. And there could be a whole host of other examples or imagined scenarios that would be condemned. But simply trying to prolong one's life, I don't see any problem with that. Tacitus Kilgore says, what do you think about cannabis, Mr. Fradd, and do you think it goes along with Christianity. So I'm not an expert here, okay, so here would be my basic answer that I'm open to changing. I wouldn't think that cannabis is intrinsically evil, for the same reason I wouldn't think that alcohol is intrinsically evil. All right, I think it probably is possible to smoke marijuana without getting high, which would be the equivalent of drunk, which would be to lose one's intellectual faculties for a time. To do that would be to commit grave sin, because you're lowering yourself to the beasts, and that's not good. I think it's irrational, actually. Now, you might say, well, there's all this evidence that shows how serious pot smoking is and how negative it is. I don't know about it, so I can't speak to that. I know that there's also people on the other side who seem to, maybe, it seems to me, kind of exaggerate the health benefits of marijuana, you know. So I don't know enough about the statistics, so I can't talk about that. But if you're simply asking me about, you know, because I mean, there are other drugs that are far more serious, you know, like morphine. Obviously, you'd need a good reason, I suppose, to have morphine, but I'm not sure. So I wouldn't say it's intrinsically evil, but I wouldn't want to get on that bandwagon. I think we have to be really attentive to those behaviors that we engage in to sort of numb ourselves, to cope with things. Does that make sense? Like, I'm open to the argument that I'm doing that with a cigar, that I'm trying to numb myself, but I actually think that's false. When I smoke a cigar, I find that my body relaxes and my cognitive faculties are enhanced. I feel like locked in a way. Same thing with coffee. My body doesn't relax necessarily, but I feel a lot more locked in. I'm not kind of trying to avoid things. Now, alcohol's different. You know, if a person feels like they have to have alcohol every night, what are they coping? What are they trying to cope with? What are they trying to avoid? And so I think there's a serious risk of people trying to avoid things. And so I wouldn't, my argument against marijuana is not a good one, but it's the one I find convincing, namely the following. We live in a day and age where the old taboos are being torn down. I don't want to be a part of that. So that's that. But I'm not an expert on any of this. You've just asked me for my personal opinion. That's what I got to say. Take a question from our local supporter. Dominique says, did you see the Knowles-Kirk discussion on the papacy? How did Knowles do in your opinion? I didn't see it. I saw that Trent Horn did a response to it, so I would check that out. But I would say my understanding is that this was a question that arose without it being planned, and so I would take it for what it was. It was probably just like a casual back and forth between someone who doesn't claim to be a Catholic apologist or theologian and Charlie Kirk, who, to my knowledge, doesn't do that either. So I wouldn't lambast either Knowles or Kirk if they didn't do as well as you would have hoped, being Catholic or Protestant. I would just say, okay, here are two friends having a conversation, and maybe they got things wrong, and that's okay, isn't it? You know, like, isn't that kind of why we like casual conversations, is so that people can just speak freely without having to be nailed to a particular position, without having to feel like they need to be ChatGPT, you know, or the Catholic ChatGPT. So that's what I'd say about that. Titus Tuas says, if when you died, this is from locals, massive thanks to our local supporters, you got put into a room for eternity with people who died the same way, how would you want to die? That is a very interesting question. How about being backed over by a Dunkin' Donuts truck? That's how I want to die. I don't know. I think I see your point. Your point is we'd be in heaven and we'd all be chatting. Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't know. I might say something like a hunting accident, but just because people are hunting, it doesn't make them interesting. Just because people die in their sleep doesn't make them uninteresting. So I don't know. How did C.S. Lewis die? I'll die that way. Bossman says, which Catholic speakers' influences do you think could beat in Something terrible just happened to the stream. Please let me know if it's still going. James Schlosser says, what were some of the differences you noticed in being off your phone between Christmas and New Year's, and how can you build better boundaries with your phone? My favorite question. Yeah, it was awesome. I would really highly recommend to all of you here that you, try to take some time away from the internet. Whenever I do, I never regret it. The days were longer, and I could concentrate on books. And I didn't need to do the things that I feel like I need to do when I'm in internet land, So like sometimes I'll think to myself, well, I'm going to have a nap, therefore I need to listen to like a story to go to sleep. Or, I'm going to help out with the dishes, therefore I need a podcast to listen to. Do you see? So when you're off the internet, you realize none of that's necessary, actually. You can just clean the bloody dishes or go have a nap. So that's what I would say. Master Samwise says, you've been active on Twitter lately. What's up with that? I don't know. I might regret it soon, but yes. You can follow me on Twitter, @RealMattFradd. I have been tweeting, and I've said a couple of stupid things and then apologized for them. It's almost like trying to ride a bike without training wheels for the first time, like you're going to fall over. So I think I did that a few times, but I apologize for that. But yeah, I've enjoyed posting on Twitter, which has been surprising, actually. I didn't think I would. But I've enjoyed my interactions with people. A lot of good folks out there. All right, let's see. What do we got here? What's your opinion on the Haunted Mansion? My nephew just went. Am I being scrupulous? I don't know what that is. So, sorry. Aaron says, loved the Net Positive podcast. Thought you were a great witness to Catholicism. Thank you. It's really nice. Jellyfish says, Matt Fradd, what's your opinion of the future of AI become like Detroit? Wow. Yeah, Detroit Become Human is a pretty fascinating video game. I didn't play it the whole way through, but what I played I found just engrossing. Mark says, I made similar mistakes too when participating in an acquaintance's YouTube live stream. When you make mistakes, learn from them, apologize when necessary, and move on. 100%. I have really been, so I won't drudge up what I did, but I said something on YouTube that was just stupid and snarky. Sorry, not YouTube, on Twitter. I had somebody call me out on it. They actually texted me. And the first thing I did was defend myself because of my pride. And then I realized he was right. And so I publicly apologized, and I'm glad that I did. Now, you might think, oh, that would put everyone must be super happy with you. No, everyone was pissed that I apologized. Not everyone, but a lot of people were. And then also, even the fella I apologized to, like, refused to accept my apology, and so I was like, okay, well, whatever. But I feel like I did the right thing. I went to confession, and I apologized, and I'm glad that I apologized. I think you should apologize when you mess up. And the inability to do that's pretty scary. Someone was recently in my YouTube comment section accusing, well, two things. On X, some poor fella accused me of hating Pope Francis. Like, that's incredibly strong. You better be right. If you're going to accuse me publicly of hating Pope Francis, you better be right about that. Turns out you're definitely wrong about that. And when I said, you should repent of this or delete that tweet, buddy, because that's serious slander right there. He just doubled down, and I get it. We would all rather double down than apologize. To apologize is terrifying. You feel vulnerable. You feel open to attack. You feel stupid. But better to feel those things and apologize than to publicly slander somebody and double down. So this person refused to do it, actually. So I just thought that was sad. So I just said, all right, well, good night. And then another fella on YouTube publicly accused me of saying Pope Francis was a heretic, which I've never done. So I said to him, okay, well, why don't you tell me where I said that? And if you can't, you should probably delete this or apologize. and he couldn't find it and refused to. So I just think there's this tendency on social media today, and I think here's the reason. Like on social media, when you apologize, a lot of people just, even the people you apologize to, they will weaponize your apology against you. And I think there is something to be said about this. When you apologize to the mob, you legitimize its claims against you. And so I understand why there are certain instances where apologizing to people who are not of good faith isn't a good idea. So I understand why it's kind of become fashionable to not apologize. But I think if you make a mistake, not just a mistake, you choose to do something evil, you know, then you apologize for it and you get up and you move on. And I just think we need to see more of that. You know, we talk about wanting to represent Catholicism well online. How about you start apologizing when you say something stupid, you know, or wrong or false or evil? Just say, hey, that was stupid of me, and I'm going to go to confession, I apologize. And then just leave it. You don't have to respond to everyone who then responds to you. Hey Matt, says Grimace, would you ever have Voice of Reason on? I'd love to see you two talk about apologetics. You two have helped me so much. I believe my assistant reached out to him. I would love to have him on. He seems like an amazing fellow, and I was really impressed with his interaction with James White. Don't miss your super chats. All right, hang on, let me see. Oh, there was a super chat up there. Wow. Thank you for supporting me, Jacob. Wow, that's huge, dude. It's really kind of you. What is your thought on people becoming disconnected from their hands, building, painting, laboring, task that requires focus or failure at it? As I work with my hands, I find my ability to pray and focus more. Ah, gosh, great question, and God bless you. So I think it's probably always been the case that people go where the money is. For the most part. I mean, you have odd people who are willing to be poor so they can do what they love, or not as rich as they could be because they want to do what they love. 100%. And fantastic. But I think in general, people go to where the money is. What I find interesting about our time is that the money is online. Start a YouTube channel. Become an Instagram influencer. Create a dropship store. So what does that mean then? Well, if it's the case that generally speaking people go to where the money is and people are going online, then it seems to me that we are going to have a real noticeable absence of the trades, plumbing, welding, electricians, carpenters, and so forth. And I think what that's going to result in is people like yourself getting paid way more than you may have 50 or 100 years ago. I also think we're going to see, because of that, I think we're going to, especially with AI and the way it's growing, and now, you know, give it 5 or 10 years, I'm sure there will be podcasts being run by people who don't exist. They will look just like you and me, they will sound just like you and me, they'll speak like humans speak, and yet there'll be no one there. So I think because of those things, we're going to see a return to the trades because people want money. So if my basic premise is right, that people go where the money is, I think in like 20, 50 years, I mean, the money is going to be hardcore in the trades because people need, you know, like a grill put in, or they need their pool serviced, or they need to do all the things that they've become, and by they, I mean me, useless at doing because they've been online. And so we're going to see, I think we'll see a swing back to the trades. What do you think? That's my idea. I want to give a huge shout out to carpenter James Christian, who's building things for me in my studio right now. It's been just so bloody helpful, and a real talented guy. And yeah. When Chase says, when will you have Brian Holdsworth back on? Any day. I love Brian and would be more than happy to speak to him. Brett from Locals says, I'm becoming Catholic from evangelical Protestantism. Any advice on how to talk to my family as a new convert that may not know all the ins and outs just yet? I'd love them to come to know the church that I have. So I guess I would just go easy with your family. Be gentle with them. Maybe emphasize the points that you know they will appreciate. So if they're evangelical Protestants, emphasizing, your Bible reading, or that the number one Bible podcast in the world is Catholic, or your love for Christ has only increased. These sorts of things, just so they're not terrified. And then I would just kind of go easy, just love them well, and ask yourself, how would you have responded if somebody had have become Catholic in your family when you were maybe against the Catholic Church? How would you like them to have acted? How could they have acted in a way that reassured you and didn't frighten you? Maybe that's it. Chet, the Catholic Viking, says, what movie do you enjoy watching over and over again? Well, I don't know if I watch any movie over and over again, but there are certain movies I would watch more than once. Dumb and Dumber is a hilarious movie. It's a Wonderful Life is a movie I watch at Christmas time. The Passion of the Christ is too difficult for me to sit through. I know a lot of people have the kind of annual habit of watching it around Good Friday, which I think's fantastic, but it's an exhausting movie to watch, and I just yeah. So excuse me. All right, we'll go back over to YouTube. Excuse me. Matt Risto asks, have you seen The Endless Summer 2? No. Missia Man, or Mishman, says, how do I conquer my fear of disappointing my family by joining the church? I would say if you love your family more than Christ, you're not worthy of him. And so you should join the church if you're convinced of its truth claims despite your fear. Do it afraid. That's what I would say about that. It's okay. It's okay if you're afraid. It's okay if you feel like you're inordinately anxious. What's more important is that you join the church, I would say. River Dune says UK versus US humor. UK humor is more of a grin. US humor is more of a guffaw. How's that? Guffaw. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, actually. As I said that, I was like, I'm not sure. But you know what I mean, like the loud, over-the-top laugh. I prefer UK humor. Joe McLean, lovely to have you in the chat, brother. He says, Happy New Year. Thank you. Same to you. Anthony says, hey, Matt. I saw a post from you a couple of weeks ago about TV shows without sexual images. Any updates? Yeah, I was trying to look for a movie that didn't involve like filth. That was it. A TV show. Bit of filth's okay, but there's clearly a line here. Pretty sure the Bible's not down with people watching people have sex. Conrad says, Matt, should I marry my girlfriend? I don't know. Ask your friends because they know you and they know your girlfriend, and if they think you should because she's a good woman, she'd be a good mother to your children, then you should, if that's the answer and you've discerned it, then 100% you should marry your girlfriend immediately. But without knowing you or your girlfriend, I wouldn't want to give advice. Faith Stock says, Matt, have you reached out to and or spoken, I love how specific this question is, to Candace since her conversion? If not, why? If yes, is she going to be on the pod? So I don't know Candace. I've met her once. I was at her house when I did that interview with George. By the way, this is an unsung interview that many people don't know about. I sat down for about 4 hours, I think it was about 4 hours, with Michael Knowles, George Farmer, and Matt Walsh in George Farmer's cigar room at their house. That episode is still and only available on Locals. So another good reason to join Locals. I'll pin that to the top once we're done here for those who haven't seen it. But I don't know Candace, and so I'm not in communication with her. So I don't have any plans of having her on the pod, and nor have I spoken to her about her conversion. But I'm happy for her. Somebody says Candace is a bit of a grifter. So I have a thought on the word grifting, and I'd like to run it by you. I think grifting means that you change your opinion based on where the money's coming from, or based on where popular opinion is. Am I right in thinking that? All right. So here's why I think we should be careful, if that's the case, on accusing people of being grifters. And it's that you don't know. Do you? I mean, how could you know if someone's doing that? I think there are certain people who, they start to think about something and they come to hold an opinion, and that opinion is pretty intense. And maybe that opinion is false. Maybe that opinion is evil. But how do you know that they are expressing opinions they don't necessarily agree with? Now, maybe there is a way to know that. I'm not saying there isn't. But it just seems to me that the word grifter gets thrown around a lot. And if you don't have good reason, like really good reason to think someone is being disingenuous, then you probably should not attack them for that. Maybe you should attack them for something else. I don't know. But you probably shouldn't attack them for something that you don't have access to. I'm also seeing a lot of people saying, like, this person's a liar. And I think they say that because it's a lot more bold. And if in fact they are lying, you want to call them out. I understand that desire, but I just think we should be careful about accusing people of things that we're not certain of. If you think differently, feel free to tell me below. I'm just looking at the live chat now. Hey, I want to invite you guys to consider spending 3 weeks in Austria next summer. Go to austria.franciscan.edu. For 3 weeks, you'll take intense, in-depth classes. You'll be in the Austrian Alps. You'll be with a bunch of other Catholics from around the world. You'll be in I think a 13th century Carthusian monastery. And they have spots available. They asked me if I would promote it. They're not paying me to do it, but I love the university there. Go check out austria.franciscan.edu, and you get like a credit. You get like a whole class, credits for an entire class that just gets jam-packed into 3 weeks. And really amazing classes too, on like Tolkien and things like that. So austria.franciscan.edu. Tell them I sent you so they like me more. Get West Huff on ASAP? No, maybe. Seems like a wonderful dude. From what I saw with his interview with Rogan, I think he did a great job. Who is the C.S. Lewis of today? It's got to be Peter Kraft. Tamara, g'day. She says, as a homeschooling mum of 7, I loved your interview with Sarah McKenzie. Yeah, she's a beautiful girl. A beautiful woman, I should say. Her podcast, Read Aloud Revival, is something I would recommend to everybody who's interested in their children and what they read. It's really excellent. She's great. Rob says, hey Matt, I got married last year. We've had our first kid. Our child is such a blessing, and we've really struggled finding balance and feel ourselves growing distant. Any tips? Yeah, God bless you, brother. I mean, first realize you're not alone, that raising a baby is really difficult, actually. And I think sometimes, because we're Catholic and we're pro-life, there can be a tendency to downplay the fact that it is difficult, that it does take a toll, because we don't want to appear like we're discouraging people from having babies, or that we're ungrateful. But I would say it's okay to find fatherhood really difficult. That's completely acceptable. What's not okay is for you to abandon your wife and child, but or to do your duty. But to find it difficult is okay. But I would say, what's something that you and your wife used to do that you loved? Maybe it's something boring, like going to see a movie. Go do that. Maybe it's ice skating. Maybe it's axe throwing. Maybe it's going out and having dinner once a week. But I would say put your wife before your child, because it was from your relationship that your child came into existence, and it's from your relationship that your child will be sustained. And so it's really important that your marriage is being fed. And sometimes you feel guilty about that because the child clearly has needs that are more immediate than you do from your spouse, or that your spouse has from you. But nevertheless, I think it's really, really bloody crucial that you prioritize your marriage. And so I would say, find someone to babysit your kids once or twice a week. And maybe you can't afford a babysitter, but maybe you speak to someone at the parish and you say, any chance. I mean, that's what we used to do. We had no money for babysitting or anything. But we would find someone, just like a younger girl, 13 or 14 years old, to come over and just watch the kids for an hour or two so we could get out. But whatever it takes, do it, If your wife's drowning in the housework and she's exhausted, help her. Help your wife. I'll give you an example of something that just happened with me. I was just in Nashville for a couple of days. 3 days, and I came back, and my wife was pretty stressed, because she's a beautiful woman and she does a lot, homeschools the kids, and we just had people visiting us, and so she's trying to take down Christmas decorations and all that, and so the next morning I got up early, even though I got in after midnight, I got up early and I said, sleep in, I love you, and I gave her an eye mask, and then I could just tell that she was kind of tense throughout the day, so I paid for her to go have a massage last night. Now, you might think it sounds like I'm bragging or something like that, and maybe I am. But I also think it's within my interest that my wife be well. Just like it's within the interest of a woman that her husband be well. So even if you want to think about this from a strictly selfish point of view, it's really important that your wife and husband be as well as they can be. And so take care of her. What does she need? Does she need to go have just a bath and no one bother her for a couple of hours? Does she need you to pick up the slack, clean up the kitchen? Or, I don't know, maybe make dinner for her. I don't know, but just the point is, try to take care of your spouse, because a spouse that's taken care of is in a much better place to engage in a place where they're at rest, I think, Sing with Cecilia says, yes, you are definitely bragging. Yeah, all right. But even if I am, I'm still right. Right? So even if I'm an immoral person for bragging, even if that's what I just did there, still my point remains, I think, A says, hey Matt, how do you overcome scruples when so much stuff I see seems to reinforce that God is more distant and harsh and judging? I don't know how not to think that is really what God is like. Yeah, I'd say read the scriptures, because if you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus Christ. Look at how kind he is to sinners. Now, is he kind to sinners who refuse to repent of their sins? No, not so much. But that's not you. So I would say that if your view of God is someone cold, harsh, and judgmental, then that's not at all the case. And if you don't believe me, read the Gospels. I would also say read this excellent book. If anyone's dealing with scrupulosity, read the book I Believe in Love. Read it. I think that scrupulosity is not a cross we are called to carry, but a scourge we are called to renounce in the most beautiful and holy name of Jesus Christ. Because I think one of the greatest weapons that Satan has is to convince you that God is a way that he isn't, so that you'll lose courage and peace. So, and you say, well, okay, maybe I know that intellectually, but I don't know how to overcome it kind of emotionally. Well, then I would say spend some time reading books that try to convince you of that. And don't read books that don't. And just take care of yourself, like you might be stressed out, like we have a fight and flight response within us. And that's one of the things I think the phone does. It sort of engages that fight or flight response, or traffic can do that, And so if you're living in a way where that's constantly being engaged, you're going to be exhausted. So, I don't know if that helps. DA Bears, I get it now, thank you. Says, how do we differentiate between Christian influences that may be self-serving and Catholic influences that may be self-serving? They both promote their brand and evangelize to a wide audience. Yeah, it's awkward. Like, I don't know what I mean. I'm self-serving. I want you to join locals. Why? Well, it's because I want to build pints. I also like money, and I would like to be able to provide for my family. So let's say I am self-serving. Well, then I need to repent of that. Not because it's not wrong to be self-serving. I mean, it depends what you mean by self-serving. I mean, we all serve ourselves. The question you just asked was so that you could be served an answer that you were hoping to get, right? I mean, it's like we all love ourselves, and there's a healthy love that we should have towards ourselves and those dearest to us. And so, it is awkward. But I don't know, how do you get around that? Do you wait until you're a saint to start a YouTube channel? Maybe, but I don't think so. Like when Christ commands us to go and evangelize, what are we going to do? I mean, even Christ said, that there are those who have left houses and lands and families, and they'll receive 100-fold in this life and in the one to come. Now you say, well, that sounds like the health and wealth gospel. It's like, no, that sounds I just quoted Jesus actually, so it sounds like Jesus. And so, yeah, there are abuses to that, but it doesn't mean God doesn't want good things for us either. And I don't know, maybe that's something we don't have to be worried about. Like if I follow a particular Catholic influencer, maybe I don't need to be terribly worried about how self-serving he is, because maybe I don't have any real access to that. Maybe what I have access to is he helping, or is she helping people love Jesus more and coming into the church more? And if they are, then I can recognize that as a good thing without having to try to psychoanalyze someone I probably don't even know. Yeah, that's really between them and our Lord, between me and our Lord. God have mercy on me, a sinner. And like, if you don't like a particular influencer, quote unquote, then you don't have to listen to them. Levi asks what the state of Catholicism was in various European countries you visited. I would say like impressive in some and not impressive in others. So it's not impressive in Germany, in many places. It's not impressive in Switzerland, in the places that I visited. It was impressive in Romania. It was impressive in Hungary. But, I also have a limited vantage point, so maybe I'm wrong. Michael says, where in Florida? I don't like to tell people where I live, so I'm not going to do that. But I hope you understand. Are you coming to Brisbane, says Jez Zah. Yes, I am. If you go to my Instagram page, I just posted everywhere that I will be. So go check that out. Excuse me. Cody says, did my super chat not show up? Forgive me. Send it again, and or don't pay me again, but post it again, and I'll respond to you. Trad Dad says, have you heard of Thomas Aquinas College? 100%. It's amazing. Big fan. Jeremy says, would you have Father Josiah Trenum on? I have no plans on doing that. I mean, he seems like a faithful priest, and for that I rejoice. But, you know, he's also against Catholicism in many ways, and fair enough, right? He's Eastern Orthodox, but I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Just Michael says, the mustache isn't for you, brother. Yes, it is. Maybe you missed the announcement at the top of this YouTube video. But, and so fair enough, I'm not blaming you, but basically everyone has to not just like the mustache, they have to love it. So maybe you missed that. I'm sorry that you missed it, but now you know. And so, yeah. You know, what are you going to do? But, you know, I forgive you. I forgive you for not realizing that. But again, it's not just a matter of putting up with it. You have to actually love it. Post about it on your social media. That would be, you definitely get points for that. How attractive is Matt? He's very, very good looking, and his mustache is beautiful. And it reminds me of the sun cresting the horizon. And I just feel myself overwhelmed with awe and majesty. You know, it's wow. You know, it's like an eyebrow for his lips. And it's great. He's very attractive. Things like that. Just, you know, that's basically what you have to do. Again, I wish that it was, you know, a voluntary thing. I wish it was open to debate. But again, it's not. It's not. So, what else we got? RL says, your interview with John Christ I found hilarious. Also, I love the mustache. If I owned any social media, I would post about it. One thing I'll say about Matt, he's extremely humble. Thank you. I appreciate that. Lip brow, yeah. God is the grand weaver, weaving his scarlet thread throughout history and my face, incidentally. When in Brisbane, you should come to the Latin Mass. All right, if I have a chance, I would be honored to be there. Ah, Cody, I keep missing your question. Where is it? Well, here it is. Okay. Having trouble with non-denominational friends that say the only main thing is belief in Jesus. It's hard to share the importance of our faith when they dismiss the idea of truth. Yeah, I would say that Jesus didn't, like clearly Jesus is the point of Catholicism and Christianity. But the idea that it's the only thing, like the only main thing is belief in Jesus, like, yeah, I agree. And you know what comes under that only main belief is what he taught. And among the many things that he taught, such as morality and humility, he also taught that he is going to establish a church that can speak in his name. So you could say to your friend, okay, well, if the only thing is belief in Jesus, that's the only thing? That's right. Okay, well, therefore, I don't need to accept the 24, 27 books of the New Testament. You know, do I have to accept that? No, you have to accept that. Oh, okay, so there's more than just belief in Jesus. Good. There's also that. What else? You know, and why should I believe the 27? I think it's 27 books of the New Testament. You know, so you might take that approach. Trad Dad says, sorry I missed your super chat. Would I invite a TAC professor on my show? Yeah, of course, 100%. I am going to put my jacket on because the sun is no longer on me and I've lost the will to live. Give me a sec. Oh, that's better. Okay. All right, there we go. It's very cold in the shade, even in Florida, which is unfortunate. Would you have Brian, someone, on to talk about the Filioque, his conversion from atheism to Catholicism? I don't know. People ask me a lot if I'd have someone on. If I don't know them, I can't really say yes. And by know them, I mean just have any idea. I don't know who this person is. I'm sure they're fantastic. Radtastic Dude says, can you evaluate this argument for me? Do you think that Jesus could be affirming metaphorical Eucharist when he said, those who come to me shall never thirst or hunger? Protestant who is learning. Yeah, look, I think Christ in the Gospel of John, he'll often make these statements that you could say are metaphorical. He'll say, I am the door. He'll say, I am the vine. He'll say, I am the bread of life, okay? But notice in those other two instances that I mentioned that no one took him literally. No one said, this guy thinks he's a door. I guess that means he's got like a door handle sticking out of his chest. Or the gate, no one, when he says, I am the gate, no one took him literally. When he said, I am the vine, he didn't say, we've got to pluck leaves off this guy. When he says in John 6, unless you eat the flesh of the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Right? When he said, my flesh is real food, my blood is real drink. People took him literally. And that's a big difference, actually. It's not like people didn't understand metaphor. When he says in John 3, you've got to be born again, people tried to figure out, what do you mean by that? I would say in every instance of John where Christ says something analogously about himself like that, either Christ or the gospel author explains what they mean, what Christ meant. Doesn't happen in John 6. So is there a sense in which Christ is the bread of life in a sort of analogous way? Yeah, sure. We Christ sustains us, sure. But two things can be true at once. And when you have universally Christians, until like John Wycliffe, well, there was one fella shortly before him, but not too distant from him, affirming that you have to eat the flesh and blood of Christ, then why, I think you should accept it. I have a video on my channel about this. You could type in Matt Fradd Eucharist or something, you might find it. Bruce says the left side of your stash is... Dude, thank you very much for making me super self-conscious by telling me that one side of my mustache is longer than the other. I really appreciate it. Why don't you post a picture of your face and we can all we can tell you about what might need to be improved. Brian says, Matt, I'm bald. No worries. I saw something funny recently. They said the best haircut for a bald man is big muscles. Joe Rogan. So if you're going to be bald, I guess the best thing you can do with your hair is to get big muscles. How is Mrs. Fradd? She's so beautiful. She's good. She's doing well. Would you consider, Jairus says, changing your name to Mustache? Yes, I would. I've considered it, and no, I'm not going to go along with that. Can you be a Christian if you don't believe in the afterlife and think it's a metaphor? It depends what you mean by Christian. Like, you couldn't be a faithful Catholic and believe that. So you're going to have to define what you mean by Christian. If by Christian you mean... I mean, you could mean it many things by... If you meant by Christianity... someone who follows the teachings of Christ, then I think you would, I think even under that definition you would have to accept the afterlife. And if you say, well, I think it metaphorical, then okay. I mean, Christians differ as to what they believe Christ meant about certain things, and so I guess it'll depend on what you mean by a Christian. Like I think one way of defining Christian is someone who believes that Jesus Christ died for their sins, and someone who has been incorporated into the body of Christ through baptism. You could mean that. So I guess it depends on how you're going to define Christianity. Who would you rather have as a boss, David Brent or Michael Scott? Oh my goodness, probably Michael Scott. I don't know. David Brent is hilarious, no doubt, but I don't know, Michael Scott. Michael Scott had this like sweet way about him, didn't he? That kind of made you like really like feel affection for him in a way that David Brent probably didn't. Have you watched Avatar: The Last Bender yet? Airbender yet? Nope. Is it a movie? Is it a show? I think it's a show, I'm not sure. Hallelujah. I want to thank you for correcting Diego. Do you guys miss Father Sharon? Of course. He's a good man. I love him. Humble man. Loves Christ. Best Australian cultural import to America, one that should be imported. Tim Tams, Vegemite. I'm going to go with Vegemite. Will you meet Taylor Marshall? I don't know what that means. I've met Taylor Marshall at Lourdes. We just bumped into each other, which was kind of fun. Matt Fradd, how do my wife and I not use NFP contraceptively? Well, I disagree with your question. I don't think you can use NFP contraceptively. I think you can use NFP selfishly, but NFP is not the same thing as contraception. Nor can it even really be used as contraception. Do you know what I mean? Because what is contraception? Contraception means against the beginning. It's where you employ some method to interrupt or negate the end of the sexual act. And in NFP, you don't do that. You might refrain from having sexual intercourse when it's more likely that your wife will conceive, but it's not contraception. So I just disagree with how the question is stated. Now, if you say, well, how do we make sure we're not being selfish? Well, that's really between you and your wife, And I think the fact that you're asking that question is probably a sign that you're aware that that's at least possible and don't want to do that, and you shouldn't want to do that. Children are a gift from heaven. Children are the primary purpose of the sexual act. So, not the only purpose, but the primary purpose. And so, maybe realize that you'll never be in a position where you feel fully ready for a child, and that's okay. Or you might be, but I mean, many people don't feel that way, and that's okay. If I was waiting until I was finally ready to have a child, we may have had one 5 years ago. I don't know. I see some talk about the dad hat. I appreciate the dad hat comments. I like dad hats. It's cold out here and I need it. I think what I should do, you tell me if you like this idea. I would like to start a Pints of the Aquinas dad hat. And, sorry, I think that just... I think that did the stream just break? I think we should do a dad hat with the Pints of Aquinas logo, sell it for charity. What do you think? I think the charity... Oh no, we're back. Oh no, we're back. That's wild. I don't know what happened. I think that I broke the stream with reference to dad hats. I don't know how that happened, but point is, I think I should start a Pints with Aquinas dad hat and give all the proceeds to some religious group that we all agree is amazing. What do you think? You agree? And I've got to figure that out now. Like a stitched Pints with Aquinas logo. I think it'd be fun. Where can I buy your Pints with Aquinas cigar online? It'll be available in May, and it will go very, 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 very quickly. Because we're only getting, I don't know how many boxes. We're getting a bunch, but I know it'll go really quickly. So I will give everyone a heads up when it'll be available online. I think if you go to pwacigars.com, right now we're trying to put a list so you can get first in line. I consider, says somebody, Taylor Marshall is a good source about the faith. What do you think? I don't watch a lot of Taylor's stuff, but so you'd probably know better than me. He's a faithful Catholic, it seems to me, from the little I've seen of him, and so there you go. But I don't know him that well. Matt, how do you surrender a problem struggle to the Lord and not let it take your peace? Oh, that's the question, isn't it? I think you say something like, Lord Jesus, I surrender this to you. I release it to you. And you just say that a lot. And you say, take care of it, Lord, because I'll just get in the way. And if you find yourself frustrated that you can't seem to release it, release that frustration. That's okay. Everything's fine. Will we ship cigars to Ireland? I don't know. I think so. I'm not sure of the legalities of all of this. So we're still figuring that out. I think there's even some states that may not allow us to ship cigars to them. So we'll figure that all out. Imad Ismail, forgive me if I got that wrong. Do you believe miracles still happen today? Healings, of course, yes. Matt, will you be opening a cigar lounge down in Florida? No, I will not. Don't you inhale? Sometimes I accidentally do, but I try not to. Any tips for doing a tech fast, maybe starting out small? Yes. I mean, there's so many ways you could do this, but one way is just to give it up for a day. Give your phone and your computer and whatever else accesses the internet, iPads, whatever. Give it away for a day. Give it to someone. Don't you hold on to it because you and I are too weak. Give it to someone. Or give it away for 12 hours, you know, kind of like a Sabbath where you, like, I don't know, give it up the night before and get it the night after. Is my audio coming in? I got some people saying that the audio is off. So it might have to do with something, I don't know, that I did terrible. Audio's fine, okay. Maybe refresh it. Although, if you don't hear me telling you to refresh it, apologies. Oh, I also want to say, my interview with Siaka that went live last night, I think is being throttled by YouTube because we talk about January 6th. So if you want to go and like, comment, and share that video, I'd really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go, I think, because people are saying audio was dodgy. Oh, no, it's fine now, okay. All right, friends, listen. Thank you for chatting with me. Thank you for sticking around. If you enjoy these little live streams, I'd be happy to do them from time to time, but if they're just like boring and too different, I don't have to do them either. So maybe let me know in the comments section what you think, and be sure to praise the mustache. Again, anyone found criticizing the mustache will be banned and possibly excommunicated. I still have to talk to Pope Francis and my bishop about this. That might not be the case, but we'll see. Oh, we have another. Okay, so basically I'll stick around as long as we have super chats. How about that? Because I feel too guilty to not answer super chats. Matt, oh sorry, Ram, I'm Matt, hi. Hi Matt, thanks for all your amazing content, praying for you brother, keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. I really appreciate prayers. Please pray for me. If you would offer a rosary for Pints and me and my guests, it would mean the world to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The ring thing says the mustache is a bit too Walter White for my liking. Right, so we've already established this earlier in the stream. It just makes you wrong. I don't know how many times I have to say this until you people finally submit, but you have to love the mustache. No one's allowed to disagree. I don't know how many times I'm going to tell you this. It's like banging my head against a brick wall. Matt, sometimes my prideful ego wishes only Catholics got into heaven. How do I not roll my eyes at non-denominational Christianity without expressing... Well, I mean... Yeah, I mean, pride is a sin, and so if you think it's prideful, you should repent of that, and you should just entrust people to the great mercy of God, and realize that a lot of people are just doing their best to figure out, you know, what is true and how they should worship Christ. And yeah, there may have been a time where you weren't a faithful follower of Christ, and you probably wouldn't want people rolling their eyes at you. You'd probably want them to come alongside you lovingly and maybe try to do that. I don't know. Do you consider Jordan Peterson to be a Christian? I mean, from my understanding, he isn't. But I don't know. Maybe he's keeping certain things close to the chest. I don't know. I know he loves Christ, or at least he loves the words of Christ. It sounds like he's very open to believing the resurrection, but I wouldn't want to speak for him. But my understanding is that he isn't a Christian. But my wife is. His wife is. My wife is too, incidentally. Matt, how do you persevere in prayer when it's dry and you don't feel like showing up? You do it anyway. You just show up. You know, and you might just choose a devotion to